If you're a professional engine builder, tuner, or fabricator, you know how crucial it is to master exhaust fluid dynamics. We're getting deep into the physics today, so if you want to stop guessing and start engineering systems that actually maximize the area under your power curve, you are in the exact right place. First things first, we've got to permanently bust the most pervasive myth floating around the shop floor. You've probably heard it a million times. Engines need back pressure to make torque. Well, no, they don't. What an engine actually desperately needs is velocity. Back pressure is literally just a restriction to gas flow. It is never truly beneficial in a thermodynamic sense. So we really need to completely reframe how we think about this before we move forward. So here's our blueprint for today's explainer. 1. The myth of back pressure. 2. The physics of exhaust scavenging. 3. Tuning naturally aspirated engines. 4. Turbochargers and forced induction. 5. Primary tube pulse tuning. And 6. Diagnosing errors by sound.
Let's start with Section 1, the myth of back pressure.
Here's the real deal. A pipe that's too big, it literally kills your gas velocity and completely destroys your low-end throttle response. You know the feeling? A driver hits the gas and the engine just feels flat and super sluggish down low. People almost always incorrectly blame this on a lack of back pressure. But what's actually happening is that the massive pipe diameter has totally tanked the exhaust gas velocity, ruining the engine's ability to pull fresh air into the cylinder. True back pressure is just a restriction. It's pure power loss. What you actually want is optimal velocity to pull those exhaust gases out as efficiently as possible.
Moving on to Section 2, the physics of exhaust scavenging.
To really wrap our heads around scavenging, we have to look at the continuity equation from fluid dynamics. It's pretty straightforward. Q equals A times V. That means the volumetric flow rate equals the cross-sectional area of the pipe multiplied by the velocity of the gas. This shows us something incredibly important. For a given mass flow rate of exhaust, if you increase your pipe diameter, the area, the gas velocity absolutely must decrease to maintain the same flow. And remember, the area of a pipe scales with the square of the radius, so even slightly sizing up your pipe diameter dramatically drops your gas velocity. And velocity? That is exactly what drives scavenging. It's the absolute cornerstone of a naturally aspirated engine. When high-velocity gas moves through the header, it acts like a vacuum, creating a low-pressure wave at the exhaust port. During valve overlap, this vacuum literally sucks fresh air and fuel right into the combustion chamber. Strong scavenging gives you incredible cylinder filling and massive power, especially in those low and mid RPM ranges where the engine really needs the most help. So, what's the magic number we're aiming for here? For your primary header tubes, your target velocity should be sitting nicely between 75 and 90 meters per second at peak torque. If you drop down below 60 meters per second, your scavenging effect just dies. On the flip side, if you push it past 110 meters per second, you're hitting excessive restriction and just choking the engine. Maintaining that sweet spot, the 75 to 90 range, is your number one goal. All right, Section 3, tuning naturally aspirated engines. Now, as a fabricator, you know you're always playing a game of give and take. At low RPMs, the engine is producing less exhaust gas. So to keep your velocity high enough to scavenge effectively, you need a smaller pipe. But as you rev out to high RPMs, that engine is suddenly moving a massive volume of air. And that exact same small pipe, it becomes a huge restriction. So a pipe optimized for low RPM velocity is going to choke a high-revving engine, while a pipe sized for peak top-end power totally sacrifices low-end grunt. You really have to decide where you want your power band to live. Let's translate this into some hard, professional rules of thumb. If you're working with a smaller 1.5 to 1.8 liter sport compact, it's going to thrive on a tight 35 to 38 millimeter primary tube to maintain that crucial velocity. Conversely, if you're building a massive 7.0 liter high-output race engine, you need 57 to 63 millimeters just to keep it from choking out. Sticking strictly to these displacement guidelines ensures you are starting your fabrication in the exact right window. Let's jump to Section 4, turbochargers and forced induction. Okay, throw a turbo into the mix, and the physics practically flip upside down. Pre-turbine, so from the cylinder head straight to the turbo inlet, you want small, short pipes to harness maximum heat and velocity for lightning-fast turbine spooling. But post-turbine, you need massive pipes. Why? Because the turbo itself acts as the ultimate restrictor, and it's doing the scavenging work for you. After the turbo, you want the largest diameter possible to just completely eliminate back pressure. If your exhaust is too restrictive after the turbo, it actually backs pressure up into the manifold, completely reversing the pressure differential and destroying the engine's efficiency. When it comes to downpipe sizing for these turbo builds, look at how aggressively it scales up. Under 300 wheel horsepower, a 2.5-inch pipe works absolutely fine. But as soon as you push past 600 wheel horsepower, you've got to step up. You absolutely must be fabricating in the 3.5 to 4-inch range, which is 89 to 102 millimeters. In these high horsepower turbo applications, restriction is literally the enemy of both reliability and power. Next up, Section 5, Primary Tube Pulse Tuning. We've been talking a lot about diameter, right? But diameter without tuning your length is honestly just guesswork. It's like building half an exhaust system. When an exhaust valve opens, a high-pressure wave travels down the pipe, smacks into the collector, and reflects back up as a negative pressure wave. You want that negative wave to arrive back at the engine exactly when the exhaust valve opens again to suck the next pulse out. Short tubes reflect that pulse really quickly, which perfectly times it for higher PM race engines. Long tubes take a bit longer to reflect, meaning they're tuned to perfectly time the scavenging pulse for low-end torque. Changing just the diameter without adjusting your primary tube length will shift your power band entirely blindly. You absolutely must tune them together. Now, if you want to get into the exact math for a custom from scratch build, there are 4 steps to calculate your theoretical optimal primary tube diameter. First, take the displacement per cylinder. Next, factor in your expected volumetric efficiency. Then multiply by your exact target RPM and divide that whole thing by 88,200 to get your target flow area. From there, you just solve for diameter using basic geometry. It is a fantastic, proven way to establish your absolute baseline before you ever step foot into the dyno room. And finally, Section 6, Diagnosing Errors by Sound. Did you know that exhaust gas velocity directly shapes the exhaust note? Seriously, listening to the engine can tell you exactly where your fluid dynamics are failing. If you're out on a shakedown run and you hear this deep, boomy drone at highway cruising speeds, your pipe is way too large. The velocity is totally dead, and you're dealing with standing acoustic waves, sluggish throttle, and a super flat low end. On the flip side, if you hear a sharp whistling or hissing, and the engine feels like it hits a literal brick wall up top, usually accompanied by skyrocketing exhaust gas temperatures, your system is restricted. Your pipe is simply too small. At the end of the day, really understanding these principles is what separates the true engine builders from the guys who just bolt parts on and hope for the best. Remember, velocity drives performance. So I want to leave you with one critical question to think about for your next project. Knowing that every single millimeter of pipe completely shifts the balance between velocity and volume. Are you building just to boast about a single peak dyno number, or are you truly engineering for the maximum area under the curve?